Hello, welcome. Come on in. Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Houston.
Good. It's 11 your time. Is that still
11 a.m.
technically good morning?
Yeah, we can
Good
call it good
afternoon.
morning, right?
Okay.
We haven't started eating lunch yet.
Good mid-morning to you. Let's go as medieval as possible.
I like
Come
it.
on in. We got Barbara Gruner in the building. Hello, Barbara. Arnell's here, Annette's here, Belinda, Ben, Donna. Hey, Donna. Glad to have you here. Julie's here. Kelly, Kendra, Linda, Matt, Sherry, Vivian. So fun to see y'all join in the room. Welcome, welcome. Get started here in just a moment. Joined today by a special guest, Amanda in the house, coming at us live from Texas. Go ahead as you're joining, drop in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from today. Stratford's here. Hello. Antonio coming from Tennessee. Hi, Laura from Houston. Clint Middle School in the house. Minnesota. Hey, Sheila. Hello from Iowa. Deanna, welcome. North Carolina. We got like a good, diverse crew here, Amanda. This is fun.
I know. Stafford's just down the street from me.
Nice. Oh, that's exciting. New Mexico's in the house. Yuma, Arizona. Independence, Missouri. Summer, thank you for your enthusiasm. There's many exclamation points. And that's here from Hayward. Hi, Carly from San Diego, just down the road. Aaron from Renton. Wow, we got like almost everyone from a different spot today. That's always fun. Of course, Texas representing, Amanda, as usual.
Of course, always.
Always. Amazing. Well, let's hit the ground running. I am super excited today to spend a little time with a friend and amazing character strong champion, Amanda. Amanda, you want to introduce yourself? Who are you? Where are you coming from today?
Certainly. So my name is Amanda Fabian. I am a current instructional coordinator in Katy ISD. So I serve on our administrative team. I do all things from providing intervention for students, ensuring all that is collaborated, state testing, ensuring that all of that, all the accommodations and services and supports are provided to students. But then I'm an avid champion for building relationships. Relationships first and kindness always is kind of my motto. I had the pleasure of meeting Houston in 2017 when I was actually serving in a secondary role. So I have dabbled in both elementary curriculum and secondary. I found my way back to elementary because my kiddo is going to be in kindergarten soon. So I love and stand by everything that Character Strong puts out there and provides to us. And I'm honored to be here today with Houston and all of y'all.
Thanks, Amanda. Also, an active Twitter champion, always digging into the work, always learning, always role modeling, and an incredible implementer of Purposeful People, which is what we're talking about today. So for those of you who are new to the Purposeful People world, welcome. Purposeful People is Character Strong's pre-K through 5th grade social and emotional learning and character development toolkit. One of the things that we always like to note right at the top is it's called something different. Why is that? Well, because Character Strong started at the secondary level, and schools in districts said, we love what you're doing, middle school and high school. Do you have work for elementary? So over the course of over a year, we worked with educators in the classroom, with counselors like Barbara, who's joined us here today, play therapists, to develop tools and resources to support the elementary world. And one of the pieces of feedback we heard loud and clear early on was, whatever you do, don't call it the same thing. Because if you're going district-wide, pre-K through 12 with this work, which we believe deeply, it is district-wide work. Once kids exit elementary school, it's not like they're done learning social emotional skills or character. But we heard loud and clear that if you call it the same thing, then by the time they get to middle school, they dismiss it, right? It feels elementary, it feels young, even if the content is distinct. So Purposeful People, an entirely different look and feel and brand and environment, and even a different approach. We take the Toolkit approach. And what we mean by that is we built around 10 traits. 10 traits that we pulled from survey data, from educators, from families, from students themselves, asking questions like, what do you want most for yourself, if you're the student, or with the students that you serve? What do you want most for those who you are raising in your own life? And these 10 words rose to the top. I love these words for lots of reasons, probably because I've spent a lot of time thinking about them and working to build tools for them. But I also really believe that they're a solid mix of social emotional and character building type of skills. Those two things sometimes get thought about as totally distinct. Sometimes they get lumped together. I want to articulate the best I can Character Strong's approach. We believe that character and social emotional learning need to be interwoven. We talk about character as an external behavior, something that we choose to do and act in with ourselves or with the people that we spend time with, our community, our classroom, our school. Social emotional learning are the building blocks that live beneath behavior. Most practical example I love to give, because I'm a big advocate for kindness, as Amanda is as well. Kindness is a behavior that we choose to act on interpersonally or even for ourselves. That action relies on social emotional skills that live beneath it. Respect is a great example. Empathy, perhaps an even better one. Empathy, being able to understand and take on new perspectives. My argument is that it is hard to practice kindness if I don't take on the perspective of who I'm being kind to first. It's hard to meet people's needs if you don't learn how to listen to them in the first place. So this list of 10, we built this list and we said, wouldn't it be cool to build resources and tools around these 10 different traits to serve and support schools through the Toolkit approach? When we say Toolkit approach, let me translate that to the mutually adaptive approach, meaning educators inside of a classroom, especially at the elementary level where you spend most of the day with your students, you know your students best in that space. So having tools and resources to pull from, not prescriptively said, this is what you have to do, but here's a lot of different resources you can play with, we learned gives educators ownership in the classroom. Dale Carnegie's famous quote, people support the things they help build. Even at the campus level, a lot of schools aren't necessarily doing the certain traits that maybe get prescribed to them with another program. So we said, what if we built a lot of different resources around traits? And you said, as a building, we're already focusing on things like respect, perseverance, or kindness. We'll pull more specifically from those areas to support or go alongside work we're already doing. So to kick things off, in the chat, which of these 10 traits do you feel most passionate about? Go ahead and respond there, and I'm going to dish it to Amanda. Which one do you feel most passionate about in the present reality, Amanda?
Perfect. I was hoping you would ask. And so as a campus, we took our 10 traits. So we operate, we have a core team that works kind of behind the scenes. We met at the beginning of the school year and kind of decided what order we were going to roll out these 10 traits throughout the school year. So at the beginning of the year, coming off of quarantine, a lot of new things, a lot of unknowns, a lot of new safety policies and procedures at school, we chose to go with courage first. We thought that students and families would be displaying a ton of courage coming back to school face to face, right? Their world had been shut down from what they knew, from school to the park to the library, going out to eat. There was going to be a lot of courage on everybody's part to come back into a building all together, to resume instruction in a normal fashion that wasn't normal. We then dove into responsibility. What is our responsibility as staff members to our students, to our families? What is the student's responsibility still in this new chaos and unknown as a student, as a child to your parents? And so we rolled out what order we were going to do these in and what made sense to us as a campus within our community, and what our students had faced and what we knew what was to come. Right now we are in our honesty unit that we just started. Right before that was empathy. And so to kind of cheat your answer, the question, my answer would be they're all vitally important, but as we go through the year, some of them kind of took that forefront, that first position, just depending on what we're up against. Right now, like I said, we're in honesty. We're going to end the year with creativity. just kind of like this explosion of what are the students' interests, continuing to give them choice, thinking about what is our summer going to look like and how can we be creative with our circumstances, what we're able to do and what we're wanting to do. So that's my answer, Houston. I hope that that's okay with you, that I kind of went all over.
I think it's the hallmark of a passionate person that when you say just choose one, you're like, I'm going to think of a different way around the answer.
Yes.
But I love the way you articulated that. That is, it brings me joy because it is like the intention of the toolkit model is what we need changes at different times.
Absolutely.
And so when we have circumstances in the world that calls for something particular, we don't have to follow a prescribed path. We like to think about these as like, Legos, they're building blocks, which means you get to choose how you arrange them to best meet the needs of your community, your campus, or as it were, the needs of the world. And I love the idea that you started with courage, especially as people are navigating a really challenging new time and creativity going into a summer where so much has naturally changed.
Yeah, and we hit the ground running in the spring with perseverance. Survival, learning, teaching, all of that was in spring of 2020 was one thing. And then going into fall of 2020, it was new and different. And not that it was fun by any means, but you could do it because there was this enthusiasm of this is new and different. We're going to make it happen and be great for everybody. But we really knew that we would need that perseverance to launch us into the spring with with state testing coming, protocols still in place, and normalcy still being farther than an arm's reach. So we were very intentional in how we scheduled or made sure that we rolled out each character trait.
So good. Well, I'm grateful that you're here, and there's lots to be grateful for as we're navigating so many of these new things. I want to start with a little activity for a lot of reasons. Number one, because the practice of gratitude we know is good for us. But number two, to role model how we've adapted so much of our work, which was already pretty naturally in a virtual environment. But we took a couple activities that were normally in person and we adapted them to the virtual world. For example, activity called Gratitude Dots normally uses an in-person die. You're supposed to roll the dice and whatever number pops up, there are different gratitude prompts associated. In the case of so many people who are either hybrid or still in the virtual world, what does it look like to do it in a digital setting? So Amanda, I'm going to hover over my screen. Okay. And at some point you just tell me to stop, and that's when I'm going to roll the dice.
Stop.
Click right here. Ooh, it's a good one. 3 animals you're grateful for. In the chat, name at least one animal you're grateful for. And if you'd like to give context as to why, please do. But Amanda, what do you think?
Okay, I'm going to give it a go. So 3 animals I'm grateful for. The first one is going to be the first pet that I ever owned on away, like when I was living on my own for the first time, was a Great Dane. Her name was Liberty. She did pass January 1 of 2020, so that was an indication of probably how the year was going to go. But she was just, this huge, docile, loving animal. She was just the perfect dog. I wish that she was still here, but it was best for her. So one would be a dog because that was my first animal that I owned by myself, took care of, and saw from the beginning to the end. Another animal that I'm grateful for, I think would be horses. I think they're so peaceful and tranquil. And when you go out to the country, I do live in Texas, so not to be cliche, but we do have a lot of family in the country, but it's just peaceful to be around them. And I would have to say in connection with that would be cows. They're just, I don't know. I'm a country girl and I've just grown up around them. So they just provide peace and tranquility for me and just help to slow things down and be grateful for, to be in the moment and be grateful for what you have. So those are my answers.
And Amanda, great role modeling of the gift of this. Not only is it the practice of gratitude, right? An exercise in gratitude with some specific prompts, but also the ability to get to learn the relationship side of this work is always the forgotten byproduct, right? That it's not just about skill building. It's also about the ability to cultivate that teacher-student relationship or staff-staff relationship or webinar co-participant relationship.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because I could have just told you dog, horse, cow, and you'd be like, okay, great, who's next? But the why behind it provides so much insight to who I am and I don't, just where I come from and part of my story. So.
Absolutely. Spoken like a true implementation master. Thank you.
I may have done it a few times.
So if I click here, it takes me to the next one. I want to showcase that you said creativity was one that you're ending with. Here's one of my favorite little ones, which is the ability, again, to provide choice. I'm a huge believer right now that students have had so many choices removed from them. So any chance we get to like provide choice is a gift. So this one is all about creativity. It's about allowing yourself to detach from like any sort of end result. And we have a playlist of songs. Students can choose their way into which song they want to listen to. And while they just listen to the music, they draw or write to that music. So I'm going to invite you, Amanda, I'm going to invite folks who are watching to take just a mindful, creative moment. We'll do it for just 60 seconds. But in the chat, first one I see, which one of these songs do you want to listen to while you doodle? Darb. I saw it first from Sherry. Let's go to Darb. I'm hitting play. 60 seconds. Pick up your pen and paper and just free draw for a minute. How'd it go? I was working on the back of a wedding invite I got, but this is what I came up with. That's definitely freeform. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, mine looks about the same.
yeah, really similar approaches we took.
I know. Look at that.
I love it. Just even that mindful moment, that freedom to create, draw, is such a gift. Sherry, good choice with Darb. It's a fun one. So for greater context, I just wanted to get us warmed up with a few different activities, some of those things that we've adapted in our virtual toolkit. And I'll even showcase that on the website itself. You'll see, if you're looking at the back end of the curriculum site here, you go to virtual toolkit, and all of those different things are created inside a set of slides that you can copy and make your own. So I click on any of these and it takes me to different activities. Kind of like the one we just did. That one's paint or draw. To the music, we have gratitude dots. All those live in the virtual toolkit. But when you think about the curriculum at large, we take a holistic approach. We believe deeply that whatever trait you're working on or however many traits you want to tackle over the course of a year, we know it's not just direct classroom instruction that's going to make school culture impact over time. That we have to take the holistic approach, that we have to think beyond just a lesson plan. So we have resources for the classroom, the playground, for families, and for staff. And you can see they're sort of represented by these icons here. And you'll see those sort of play out through the slides as well. Different slides will showcase what we're talking about, whether it's a classroom piece, a staff piece, or somewhere in between. Today, I want to showcase a couple examples around empathy. As I looked into the chat, that was a big one that people were passionate about. I think it's hugely relevant in our world right now. Probably always has been, but it feels particularly relevant right now. So let's take a look at a couple of different things. We'll start with the classroom. Classroom, to me, is going to be the most rich bucket of tools when it comes to how we approach this work. We have all kinds of resources. And in fact, there's sort of so many resources that we break it down into what we call our serve model. I like to think about it like a really well-organized, color-coded notebook for a lot of different great resources and tools. Right? There's so much good stuff out there that we've done a lot of work creating, but also curating some of that stuff in a way that we believe is sort of like an easy to approach and easy, perhaps more importantly, to integrate into the fabric of what you're doing. The SERVE model is sort of 5 different components: start intentionally, engage relationally, respond with empathy, values practice consistently, and exit intentionally. And maybe at a high level, you might get some of those things naturally, but start intentionally. As an example, what are we doing to start the month, to start the unit, to start each week, to start each day? Engage relationally is all about purposeful play. Respond with empathy is about mindfulness. It's also about brain boosts, right? How to regulate up or down. Values practice consistently is the most traditionally curricular part of the toolkit. We'll talk more about like straight up lesson plans and what that looks like. And then there's also ways to close down a unit, month, even each day. All of this with a practical focus around the trait. Amanda, how does the SERVE model play out in your world?
As I've shared with you before, the SERVE model, it perfectly mirrors the ideal lesson plan, right? You're in the classroom, you're starting intentionally, you're introducing that new skill, that new concept, something new to that content area. You're allowing the students to engage, right? If that's exploring science, hands-on, math manipulatives, a new text, whatever that might be, responding to it, right? You want their response. What do they already know? What do they think about it? Finding their schema. Where do they stand? Where are you going to start? And where are you going to take those students? Values practice consistently, right? We're going to send those students off in a typical lesson to show what they know, to do independent work, to work with them. So as they're practicing those values or those content pieces, what does it look like? How are they progressing? Do they have a great grasp on that? What is their area of need as they're practicing those values or that skill? And then closure. Every lesson has closure, whether that's whole group, but how are we being intentional, making sure that they got what they need from that lesson, learning that new skill, learning that new trait, and how are we sending them off to then generalize that into the greater good, right, outside of the classroom with their parents and families in the community, and being intentional about that as we would an academic lesson, the same way as we would with one of any of the character traits.
Well said. Yeah, great instruction, but also great structure to support what is ultimately like a lot of different types of things, and hopefully meeting different needs depending on where you're at in your implementation, your readiness, or even just what you most need in the context of your classroom. Let's showcase a couple of what these things look like. So for start intentionally, again, ways to start the month. At the beginning of the month, introducing the trait, as you said, like we're just like, well, let's at a high level, what are we even talking about? So we have images that are projectable, that help set the stage with definitions, right? Both in English and in Spanish. All of our work that's ever student facing or family facing is translated into Spanish as well. The idea here is that we're just accessing that common language. We're building a common language and starting the month by saying, what do we know about this thing already? And where can we go with it over the course of the month?
Absolutely. And I think that's so important because you'll have kids that'll come into your class, and as a teacher, educator, you might assume that they all understand the concept or that the addition sign means to add, but making that a foundation where everyone has the same understanding is so impactful, so that you can all start at the same place and move forward and clear up any misconceptions. So we love our classrooms each have a poster with a sign. It's hanging in their classroom, and then they stay for the remainder of the year. So it's always there as an anchor point for the students to relay back to or to remind what they've learned from that unit, and that kind of thing. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. The digital component is huge, but also they're available to be printed and posted. And that's kind of the hope, is like the reinforcement that's necessary as those practical reminders. Also inside the start intentionally sort of category, at the beginning of every week, we have the opportunity to showcase an illustration. The idea here is, what are the nonverbal ways that we can sort of understand story or access this trait just through imagery? I love art. I love creators. And we've worked with creators at this point now from all over the world, from Nigeria to Pakistan to all over the US, to bring to life, right? Sometimes the conversations I get to have with these illustrators is like, what do you think this trait means? How would you bring it to life? And we have some really beautiful examples of what that looks like. So again, this is from the empathy category. Here's another one of my new favorites from a woman named Saliha from Pakistan. She's incredible. And then for all of these images, we also have them in line art as well. So students can do a coloring activity. And what was your reflection earlier, Amanda, that I
just
loved
think
this idea?
It's so great, because if you flip back one screen, Houston, I was telling him, like, the elephant not necessarily is gray to everybody. If you're looking at the leaves and the branches right now in our Houston, Texas world, everything is brown and it has, died due to our winter freeze. And so perspective is everything. And I think these images are so powerful because the student conversation that comes out of them, whether that's dealing with perspective or just what they know, that schema they're bringing to your classroom, to their peer groups, to our campus, is so different. And so hearing little things that stand out to them, I think every kid has a story, and whatever that anchor point for them is, that's going to come out with these visuals. They are going to provide you the content to talk about because they have so much to offer. And I think it's very empowering for students to be able to look at an image, right? So we would look at this one, discuss empathy, but then this black and white model gives them the opportunity to color it in themselves. There's no right or wrong way. It's what they see and what they bring to the table and what that looks like to them. So it's very powerful to have the opportunity for them to make it colorful in their own way.
Yeah, I love that reflection, like exercising empathy, even just in the action of the coloring piece itself, that perspective taking. As we continue to move forward in the StartIntentionally sort of category, another big piece of the puzzle, one of my favorite parts, is we bring forward diverse quotes from people from all different perspectives and backgrounds, speaking into this trait in powerful ways. And the idea here is, if I can even, I'll bring it up here in the curriculum itself, navigate down here to classroom, StartIntentionally. You'll see as I scroll down, all these different illustrations. But this idea here is to start the day, and that for each week, we might focus on an entirely different quote. And it was really important to us to bring people's likenesses forward so people could see themselves in the people who are sharing these things and just access different perspectives. But instead of just giving a quote and moving on, the idea would be intentionally over the course of a week that we break it down. On day one, you might talk about vocabulary, and then you come back to the same quote and you unpack biography. Who is this person? How does their life connect to empathy? Day 3 and day 4 would be related to reflection. So being able to unpack that quote as how it relates to your own life, maybe even how to put it into action in your school, your community, your family, your world.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I think, right now in education, we focus so much on having a diverse classroom library that reflects every student in so many different ways that there are to be. And this is a direct correlation with that, where students can see, oh, there are famous individuals that are famous for something other than being a great athlete or being a great singer. Like, they model these character traits that have helped them to become who they are. And these are so important, right? They're those soft skills that people tend to not think about, but they are what got us from point A to point B and where we are today. So it's huge for them to see these visuals and they can see themselves, right? It's not, everybody doesn't look the same. I don't have to be prescribed to look a certain way to fit a certain demographic. There's beautiful things and power within being who you are and having these traits. So I love that our students get to see these visuals and grow up to aspire to be someone who's empathetic or honest, not just a fast runner, athletic. So powerful, Houston.
Love that. Yeah, reflection. We'll talk about this with perseverance later, but being able to access different people who, exactly like you said, no matter what background they come from, a through line with so many people is that there is an element of character, and discovering that and unpacking that and sharing that. Does that mean that all people live all character traits perfectly well? Right. No, but at least we have perspectives to share and explore and live into. The E in the SERVE model is engage relationally. That's that purposeful play piece. And the idea here is that it's less about having a conversation on the far side and even prescriptive learning. It's more about just the experience and being able to do things that are both playful, but also experientially driving deeper understanding. This one's one of my favorites. It's called Toss the Feelings. Normally it's an in-person beach ball that you write feeling words all over. And the whole idea is to help expand our emotional vocabulary. In place of a physical beach ball, we built a virtual one for those who are in the virtual or hybrid world. So Amanda, let's go ahead and exercise this. You get to choose a color, and we'll click on that one on the ball.
I'm going to go with purple. That's my daughter's favorite color, so I'm feeling it. Afraid.
Afraid. Amanda, when was the last time you felt afraid?
I feel like I don't often feel afraid, but I will have to say, not knowing what school was going to look like in August, I felt afraid in the sense that I know how important it is for students, the consistency, the routine, social, emotional aspect of connecting with educators, teachers, their classmates. And so I was afraid and not knowing if the students were going to get the opportunity to be with their peers. Because as you had mentioned, Houston, so much was taken from them. And school can be such a safe place for the majority of our students, that had me afraid for the future of our students, the hope of this generation that's going through primary and secondary education. What does that look like for them?
Yeah, that's that empathetic fear. That feels on brand for you, Amanda. Thank you for sharing. So the way this would work in the classroom is Amanda gets a chance to reflect on that. We're developing that vocabulary, and then she would pass to someone else, and they might choose a different word, give them an opportunity to reflect themselves. If I go back to this virtual toolkit inside of the curriculum, one of my favorite parts about it is you can make your own copy of these slides. And as a result, you get to edit this as you choose. So those gratitude prompts, you can change those out. If you come down here to the toss the feelings activity, I can edit this, right? This is my copy inside the toolkit, because we know that people support the things they help build, but also depending on what your classroom needs, or if you want to revisit the activity again to change it up, to keep it fresh, those sorts of things are available inside the toolkit. Come next to the R, respond with empathy. Right? These are ways to help students focus on mindfulness, or conversely, sometimes it's also about getting students up and moving, a really fast sort of thing, like a brain boost. We know sometimes students are at a low energy point, sometimes they're at a high energy point. And even if we just take 1 minute to practice that mindful moment, or to get them up and moving and shaking, that's an opportunity for us to connect and strengthen or deepen their understanding of that trait. This one's called Trading Places. It's just a really fast activity that is fun and chaotic in the context of an elementary classroom. But in the virtual sense, instead of trading places, we could just have students use the chat to say me or not me. In fact, in the chat, make sure your settings are set to both panelists and participants. Let people chat with everyone here. Just in the chat, go ahead and reflect me or not me. And Amanda, you and I can do it verbally out loud as well. Here we go. First one. Whoop. Everyone with curly hair.
Well, today a little bit.
Today a little bit. Yeah, I would say wavy. I'm on the wavy train. Everyone who likes pineapple on their pizza.
Definitely not me.
Oh, Amanda, this was a test of our friendship. I love pineapple on my pizza.
I'll just give you all of mine.
That's fair. That's legitimate. How about everyone who had a hard day this week?
Me. But I persevered and we got through it.
Yeah. I had a hard day this week too. Everyone else loves listening to rock and roll.
Me. That's probably not my top. Being from Texas, country is my thing, but I do love some good rock and roll.
You like listening to rock and roll. You love country music.
There you go.
There you go. Everyone who likes eating sushi.
Oh, me.
Me too. One of my favorites, actually. What's your go-to roll?
I like having the snow crab inside. Anything else is just wonderful. But if it has that, I'm game to try it every time.
I love it. Everyone who's afraid of the dark. Me.
Not me.
No? Nothing?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
Maybe if I'm somewhere that I've never been before, that would be, I guess, like a dark alleyway. Yes, of course. Yeah,
still in my own house. I'm still afraid of the dark. Always have been. You can kind of see that like in like a fast-paced sense, not only like a quick empathy building exercise, but also a little brain boost. Gets people moving. It's fast-paced. It's a little different than what happens inside the values practice consistently portion of the toolkit. This is going to be the most traditionally curricular, and I would suggest that most things here are going to be things that are roughly 20 to 30 minutes in length. Your traditional lesson plan, right? It's sort of that whole idea of here's emotional journaling, what we're about to do right now. And this one's not even like 20 to 30 minutes. This one happens over the course of multiple days. We got a lot of different ideas here. This would be something you come back to and unpack. But the idea would be you take a piece of paper, fold it into a few different spots. You have a few different sections, and you're going to keep an emotional journal for multiple days in a row. Today, I just want to focus on a couple of them, day 2, 3, and 4, and I'll even give a little visual role model. If anyone in the audience wants to follow along, we're just going to focus on these 3. So I'm going to take add a piece of paper. One more of these. Perfect. Apologize for the screen going in and out of blurriness. That is a Zoom frustration that is perpetual with me. Hopefully, sometimes it just takes a few seconds to reload. We'll give it a chance. In fact, I'll reshare my screen. All right. Ooh, I found. How's it going on your end, Amanda?
Good. I'm down to the comics.
Oh, great. All right, you're moving ahead. Let's share those middle three if you're up for it.
Okay.
What's the simile?
I said, I felt as energized as the sun today because I got to share a passion of mine with all of y'all. And then I drew a sun. Super. The art teacher would be proud.
That's a good looking sun. Do you have a
And
haiku?
then my haiku about my feelings is relationships first, social emotional learning is essential for all.
Ooh, good stuff. I said I felt as healthy as a Terminator because we set up a gym in the back and I worked out this morning.
Yes.
This is my picture of how I'm feeling. You and I, we take different approaches, abstract versus direct. My haiku is, I feel free to be dedicated to myself, to grow, to become. Thanks for walking through that with me.
Yes. The beginning of my week was heavy, so this is energizing me today and tomorrow. It's wonderful. It came at the perfect time.
Amazing. Then we exit intentionally. Practical ways to close down a day, a week. There's all sorts of different resources inside the toolkit itself. You get to see, we come back to the character trait at the end of the month. We review, we reflect. There's end of the week exits, which tend to be a little bit longer form, but there's also even daily things. Simple fill in the blanks or a couple of different type of reflection activities. This one's one of my favorites. People know it from fist to 5. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how well do you think you've practiced empathy so far today? Just give a little self-rating.
Maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah. Why do you say 4?
I truly haven't interacted with a ton of people today, but those, I'm fortunate I have my office is off one of the main hallways. And so it's open door all the time, except for right now it's closed. So they know something is up. But I always strive to listen first before I respond, right? Listen to understand before I respond. So I feel like I'm pretty good about that, but I did have to boot some people out before this. Until then I had to hop online. So that's a 4. I mean, I think there's always, opportunities to be more empathetic. So
I love it.
Striving for the 5.
Me too. I set a character goal today to check in with one person every day. So I'm feeling a little bit more intentional around that than usual. That's why I'm at a 4. Just to acknowledge, we also do, people are asking around the implementation of different grade levels. I'll talk more about implementation here shortly, but our work does span pre-K through 5th. Pre-K is a new addition. Amanda, I know that you've been working and using that in your building, which is really fun to know that that's getting put to good use. We also have, we talked a lot about the classroom. That was a big focus here on the front end, but we also have resources for our families. Yep. Families, we send letters home to give people context as to what we're talking about, what we're doing. There's conversation starters. And we also have what's called purposeful pursuits, practical ways for families to engage in the practice of whatever traits at hand. You use these letters home, yeah, Amanda?
We do. And then on an even larger and extremely consistent scale, I tweet every Friday. So Friday morning, a family dare goes out. And so that is viewable on our campus Twitter. Teachers will retweet and share that, but they kind of give a precursor to students. They'll introduce it to their students and talk about it. Of course, that stems up conversation to how they might complete that family dare at home over the weekend. When kids come back on Monday or at the beginning of the week, we touch base with students to see, did you do it? Did you not? Why or why not? And it's just great conversation. It gets parents, caregivers involved in what we're doing here on campus. It gives them just enough, right, something tangible to hold on to and to attach themselves with purposeful people, but not so much to where they feel overwhelmed and that this is something that's not doable.
That is the delicate balance. I love that intentional implementation, the tweets, which, we know that they're invitations. They're not demands. They're opportunities for people to engage. And even if only a handful of families choose to do it, well, that's progress. It's meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have resources for the playground. We know that that's an area where those character behaviors sometimes are bigger challenges. So we wanted to create resources to support even practical activities or games or even reframes around games that students are already playing that infuse the trait into the practice itself. But perhaps my most favorite component of the toolkit relates to the staff. We know that when it comes to school culture change, we're first and foremost in the business of adult behavior change. That's my favorite line from Dr. Clayton Cook, implementation scientist, and his background is in implementation research. And that's the hard truth that I believe is so important. So here's an example of one of the what we call purposeful pursuits dedicated to staff. In fact, I'll show you what it looks like. My goal is to show you the back end of the curriculum site as often as possible, so you can kind of see how what I'm talking about in these slides relates to what we have here. So we have all these different challenges related to the trait that are built both in text as well as in images. Amanda, how do you all use the staff challenges?
We took 2 large scale approaches this year, which I think will be coming up in a couple of slides. But first, we created a Purposeful People Football League. We divided our staff into 2 leagues, the blue and the silver. That's our campus colors. Teachers were drafted, so they received a drafted ticket in their mailbox that told them this is what team you're on. Here are your teammates. You have a week to come up with a team name and kind of like rally your troops. We then created some playbooks. So around 4 core units. Let me grab one that's not written all over. But here's what they look like. So each one was different. It's a playbook. It had the trait at the top, and then you could check off what you had. So this was in teachers' mailboxes at the beginning of each unit. We had touchdowns and 4 different categories. The touchdowns were all of what Houston is just showing us, kind of those staff pursuits. So those were always character strong, purposeful people driven, stuff that we didn't come up with as a campus, that was provided. And then the rest, the field goals and the spirit points, were stuff that we created as an administrative team at the campus. And then last and most importantly, we did fan recognition, which was a QR code that went out in our school newsletter, through grade level newsletters, where parents, community members, whoever had access to that could then tweet that. So this was cooperation. They could talk about how their student's teacher or how a staff member on campus exhibited cooperation. What the staff didn't know is they were going to get all of those kudos. So we compiled all of the notes for every person. They got a personalized printout in their mailbox, and it was super powerful, very, very powerful. So we did cooperation, gratitude, respect, and perseverance. So that took us from October to Super Bowl Sunday. We then had Frito pie and concession stand food and a football celebration leading up to the Super Bowl.
So good.
Yeah, so we're wrapping up. If you want me to talk about the last thing that we did briefly, We're wrapping up the school year with Czech Bingo, so it's taking the last of our character traits that we have for the remainder of the year. We're playing bingo in our staff lounge, so each staff got a sheet of labels with their name on it. They got a small bingo card in their box, and then in a couple of slides, you'll see our large bingo board that I created is in our staff lounge. So as they get a bingo, they put their name, they get a drawing every Friday, and those individuals are getting incentives for modeling the behavior, right? It's it's buy-in because they get to pick and choose. There's a choice in all of the aspects. But it's been great. So like you said, Houston, staff buy-in is that first thing, the adult behavior. And I think we've done a great job of facilitating that and modeling that for them, and then ultimately for our students.
So amazing. Yeah, we know that the adults are the key to all this. Implementation is the key to all this, which means that we have to be intentional in our approach. And the gamification and the incentives are such a key piece of bringing it to life, right? Speaking of implementation, it's a huge focus of ours. And to answer a question that came up earlier, are these set up by grade level? You'll actually notice on the site that they're into buckets, into K through 2, 3 through 5. And we do that so people have a little bit of a toolkit approach that can pull from things as they need to. But the gift is we've created these implementation plans that do break it up by grade level. Every single trait has 3 different versions of implementation to hopefully make that a little bit easier in your world. We have flexible implementation, which is simply saying, how do I make sure I never repeat an activity, pre-K through 5th grade? But then there's 2 other variations that I think are really powerful. The first one is daily implementation. What would it look like to weave this into my work on a day-to-day basis? Week 1, week 2, week 3, and you can see here, this is 2nd grade. On Tuesday, this is what we're doing. You can see here, week 4, 3rd grade, Monday, this is what we're doing. If I come down a little bit further, you have 1 lesson per week, the final version of implementation, which is that structured more of potentially a counselor push-in model, or we only have 30 minutes protected per week for this work. So in week 2, in 3rd grade, these are the 3 components we're working on. I love these because I can click here directly. And if I'm part of implementation on my campus, I just send this out to staff and it takes them with that link, takes them directly to that portion of the toolkit on the site itself. I know you use this, Amanda, for implementation. What does it look like in your world?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned before, we have our core team that sits and kind of looks at things, but we really give it up to the grade levels and team leaders. They take this implementation, and at the beginning of each unit, we'll start, instead of, like I had mentioned, instead of start of month, it's start of unit. But we like the choice that the first one gives, and so we allow our teachers to stay within that character trait, but then to prescribe what they need for their class and their group of students. So like Houston mentioned, we have pre-K through 5th. We also have several special programs on campus that will take bits and pieces of different grade levels because they have a mixed group of kiddos. So we have it campus-wide, no matter what program or classroom the student is sitting in.
I love that. Well, let's talk about some of the highlight reels, Amanda, as we're coming to the end of our time. I would love for you just to showcase, we can talk about this theoretically all we want. We can show you the fun activities. We can do them live here. But how does it translate to your work? I know primarily you're working inside of Tom Wilson there in Texas. So tell us about some of your favorite stories.
And so first and foremost, I just want to say kudos to our staff and our teachers, and most importantly, our students. This is not something that is solely myself or just our administrative team. This is a campus-wide initiative that we've adopted, 1 as a district, 2 as a campus, but also as individuals. And so this is a collaboration of stuff from our entire campus that I am sharing with you. These are obviously, it's not just my soul that I'm sharing, it's the soul of our campus. So I just like to give kudos to our teachers because they are our daily heroes. But jumping into this, this is an example from 1st grade. So empathy was one of our most recent units or traits. And so after learning about what empathy was, right, they started intentionally, they gained an understanding of what empathy would be. They got to then basically just draw an illustration that would exemplify empathy or a situation where they would use empathy. And then they shared out about what they drew, why they drew that, maybe how they've used empathy prior. And you can imagine as a 1st grader, right, like empathy is a big deal, and then being able to draw that and then write about what that looks like, that's super powerful. So this was 1st grade. In fifth grade, we did during our perseverance unit, they got to research individuals that were famous, business owners, et cetera, who had failed time and time again, but are yet successful. So right, fifth grade going to sixth grade, they're about to make a huge transition into what school looks like for them. And it was powerful because they got to see that even though I failed, there's still success yet to come. Where I'm at is not where I'm destined to be, right? The hardship that I'm walking through is not my forever. It's not my destiny. So that was powerful for them to see people that they admired had failed, whether they were athletes, business owners, authors, that kind of thing. So that was happening in fifth grade early this spring. This is a note I actually received from one of our fifth graders. This was at the very beginning, about 3 months into starting Purposeful People this school year. Imagine coming back from not having school for several months, coming back to school that looks very different, but they want it to look the same. One of our fifth graders took it upon herself to write several note cards. They were all varying in their message, but essentially the same. And she passed it out to every staff member she saw in the building. Just phenomenal. One example of students taking action from what they've learned, how they felt empowered, and then sharing that with our staff. So completely not even asked of her, not even something put on her radar. She just did it by herself. So it caught district news. It was phenomenal. Here's a third grade example during kindness. One of the classrooms had their students sit in front of the whiteboard. You could do this with smartboard, whiteboard, chalkboard, a poster behind them. And then one at a time, their classmates were called to the front. They wrote a kind word, a kind note about the student. When it was full, the student was able to turn around and take a moment to themselves to read what was written. Super powerful, right? To read all of those kind things. And then as a class, they celebrated the student. And then throughout the kindness unit, every student was celebrated in the same way. So they all had a chance to sit in front of the board. Okay. This one I love, honesty caption. So right, we all have those moments where what I'm really thinking is not what I said. So this was actually one of our counselor units. Our counselor is also able to pop into classrooms and provide instruction based on our digital citizenship in conjunction with Purposeful People and a slew of other things that she does curriculum-wise. But this was wonderful. The students got to pick from an array of black and white images. They then put thought bubbles of what students were really thinking. Peers that had the same picture could then partner up to share how they had similar thoughts or different thoughts and why. And then just the importance of when you receive an honest thought from someone and it may be hurtful or makes you sad, like knowing that it's still meaningful and how to use positive honesty as well as negative honesty for good. These are hanging by our counselor's office and they're super entertaining to look at. They provide a good laugh and smile. This, our football league, so staff-based that I talked about, this was in our student lounge, or excuse me, our teacher's lounge. We just had that big football field. There were helmets down the side with each team name. Of course, there's the score sheets, the playbooks on the side. Every quarter, a team would win. They would be celebrated, whether that's a Sonic drink, jeans pass, etc., however fancy. We were willing to get that quarter. We did have an overall winning team, and so that was fun. But touchdowns, the way our points worked, you could get touchdowns, field goals, spirits, or again, the fan recognition. But it was just super powerful. Again, touchdowns came from character strong, purposeful people-based curriculum. Field goals and spirit were created here in-house based on our need. What were we needing more as a staff? How could we connect better with each other and students and community? And then fan recognition was super powerful, as I said. It brought some teachers to tears of the things that were said by their parents and community members of them that they would have never known otherwise. That was in our teacher's lounge. And then the last thing.
Amanda, before we jump to the last thing, there was a question from someone about how do you encourage implementation from teachers that already feel burned out and this may feel like something else they need to do? I feel like in some ways, what you're seeing here is a little bit of an answer to that.
Yeah, and that was one thing. We knew there was never, going into 2020, 2021, there was never an ideal or a good time to launch something relational. But we knew coming from quarantine, pre-COVID, post-COVID, during, like whatever session of that we're in, that we needed something. Because we found very quickly as a staff that during that spring 2020, we were hosting Zoom virtual happy hours just to talk to each other and see each other. So we knew going into the year before August even came that relationships was something we were missing, and how were we going to be intentional and building that, but also not feeling like I said, something else on their plate. With the playbooks, nothing was ever mandatory. So your team didn't have to have all 8 participants do that thing. You had to have like 5 out of the 8, 3 out of the 5. And so it gave room for choice. If you didn't feel comfortable doing that, if you didn't have time, if you just flat out forgot. But the teams, and as intentional as we were in crafting our teams, they held each other accountable. There wasn't much that we had to do as an administrative team to ensure that teams were participating. Because it was centered around relationships, serving each other and others, it just naturally happened, and it was a completely beautiful thing. At first, right, when we rolled it out, it did seem like, oh my gosh, this is one more thing on our plate. But as it rolled out, people noticed these are things I do already, or things that I wanted to do. I just needed the courage or the push to do it. And it went hand in hand with what we were doing purposeful people-wise in the classroom anyway. So we didn't try to create anything that was an extra step. It looked like that, but it did not take tons of extra effort. And they got rewarded in the end. So there was incentive, right, to participate because there was an incentive coming at the end. And then we ended up treating everybody at the very end. So even if your team didn't win, there was still huge incentive. But I would love to talk more. If you have specifics, you can always reach out to me and we can talk through all of that. Lastly, we're wrapping up the year with Czech Bingo. Our campus principal came up with this idea. She loves purposeful people just as much as I do. So it goes through our last, care is not one, but we needed an extra C, so we put care in there, which self-care is always important. But our last 3 character traits for the year are at the top with care. Like I said, each teacher got a sheet with their last name on it. They've put them up there as they've completed the task. When they get a bingo, they put their name in that little envelope on the side, and then prizes are drawn. Again, none of this was ever said mandatory. They basically got the bingo card and the names in their mailbox, and this was all done without even having to remind them like, hey, go put your stickers on the bingo board, or did you get a bingo today? This was all done just because we've been very intentional in building buy-in to what we're doing with purposeful people and how that impacts the whole student. So.
Man, that's so good. So much goodness and practical wisdom. And I love just like the beautiful, the story, the narrative that we get to see played out through like talking about it at a high level, but getting to see the visual of how students experience it, how staff experience it, how you're intentional with that implementation. It's just been incredible. Thank you for your gift. I know you have a meeting to attend in 1 minute, so I want to make sure you get to that. So in the chat, would you please celebrate Amanda? Just give her some shout out, give her some love. You all know how meaningful this work is, how sometimes challenging it can be. So, man, I just want to celebrate you for the hard work that you do to put this into action, to make it intentional.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I mean, I could talk about this for hours on end. And I hate that we have something pressing, but I totally purposeful people, character strong. I love every bit about it, every nook and cranny. I just soak it up and try to disperse that to our staff. But really, the curriculum, it runs itself. It is so user-friendly. The serve model is in line with what we do as educators already. And as an administrator and a campus leader, the staff will feel the passion, the love, and the energy that you have from it. And it just naturally happens. You just have to provide the opportunity. So, and I think the same for students, right? You provide the opportunity and they'll flourish. So it's the same for our staff.
Well said. Thank you so much, my friend. If folks do want to contact you, please send Character Strong a direct message. And if Amanda's up for it, we'll connect those dots.
Yeah, absolutely.
To make sure that. Thank you so much, Amanda. Have a great meeting.
Thank you
to all
so
of
much,
you
Houston.
In the chat, thank you for being here. Our team will drop a link so you can download some sample activities, some of the things that we talked about today. If you download samples from our site, you'll get access to many of the empathy samples that we even looked at today. So check it out, enjoy. And if you're interested in becoming a Character Strong school, a Purposeful People school, drop us a note, you can request a quote, send us an email. We're happy to help. In the meantime, make it a great day. Amanda, hope to see you again very soon.
Yes, very soon. Thank you all.